I'm 61 years old, and I've always lived my life with quiet pride, careful and polite, never making waves. Love for me had become something far away, like a story you once heard, but forgot how it ended. My husband passed away 5 years ago, and since then, I've stuck to my routines, my work, my garden, my quiet evenings with tea and old movies. I thought my days of feeling truly noticed were over, but a few weeks ago, something happened that still shakes me up when I think about it. I never thought something like this could happen to me. Please don't make the same mistake I did. It had rained that evening, the kind of gentle, steady rain that makes the world feel hushed and thoughtful. I stayed late at the office, catching up on some numbers my team had messed up. My boss, Greg Bennett, had already left for a dinner meeting, but he'd called to say his son would be by soon to give me a ride home. I almost said no. I didn't want to bother anyone, least of all Jason, his son in his 20s, whom I'd only met a few times at company picnics and holiday parties. But when I stepped out of the building, my umbrella fighting the wind, I saw Jason's black SUV parked right up front. He hopped out and jogged over with that easy, young energy, all tall and softly sure of himself, his hoodie soaked at the shoulders. "Hey, Miss Collier," he said, flashing me a warm grin. "Hop in? I've got the heat cranked up. Just call me Diane," I said with a small smile. "But thank you. That's kind of you." I slid into the passenger seat, and he circled back to the driver's side. The inside was warm, smelled faintly of leather and something citrusy maybe. Cologne, maybe gum. He adjusted the mirrors and pulled off into the street with smooth skill, hands relaxed on the wheel. "I hope this isn't too much trouble," I said, folding my hands in my lap. Jason glanced at me, his expression hard to read for a moment. "Not at all. Honestly, I kind of needed the drive." We rode in silence for a while, the rhythmic swish of the wipers filling the space. Street lights shimmered on the wet pavement, and the city felt slower, quieter than usual. I found myself sneaking glances at him, the way his jaw tightened. When he concentrated, the little dimple that appeared when he smirked at something on the radio. "You've worked with my dad a long time," he said suddenly. "Almost 20 years. He nodded. "He talks about you a lot. Says you keep the whole place running." I laughed softly. "Well, someone has to." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Something was building behind his quiet tone. I could feel it, even before he spoke again. "He doesn't really know me," Jason said, "more to the road than to me. Not like you probably think." I turned slightly in my seat. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then pulled the car over into a small parking area beside a park. The rain had softened to a drizzle, the glow from the dashboard casting blue shadows across his face. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know this is weird. I've been holding something in for a while, and I didn't expect to say anything tonight. But now that we're here, I don't think I can keep pretending." My breath caught. I wasn't sure what I expected, a story about a fight with his father. Maybe, or something about a lost job or broken heart. But what he said next, "I've thought about you for a long time." I know that probably sounds crazy. You're older, you work with my dad, I get it. But I've watched you at those events. The way you carry yourself, like you're made of something quiet and strong. I don't know, I wanted you to know. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The rain had stopped. The only sound was the quiet whir of the heater, and the blood rushing in my ears. Jason turned toward me, but he didn't reach out or move closer. His voice was steady, respectful. "I don't expect anything. I just needed to say it out loud. Because you matter, and you deserve to hear that from someone who sees it." I felt something twist in my chest. An ache I hadn't known was there. Not from his words alone, but from how deeply they unsettled something in me. A truth I hadn't admitted in years. That maybe I still wanted to be seen. Maybe I wasn't as done with feeling as I thought. I finally looked at him, really looked at him. His eyes weren't demanding or pleading, they were just open, vulnerable. And that shattered me more than anything, because it had been so long since anyone looked at me like that. I didn't sleep that night. After Jason dropped me off, quietly, politely, without pushing or asking for anything, I stood in my foyer for a long time, my coat still on, staring at the door after it clicked shut. The house was dark except for the soft amber lamp near the stairs, casting long shadows on the walls. I'd known for decades everything looked the same, but something inside me had shifted, and I couldn't unfeel it. His words looped in my head like a forgotten song you suddenly remember. I've thought about you for a long time. You deserve to hear that from someone who sees it. No one had said anything like that to me in years, maybe ever, and certainly not someone like him. The next morning, I moved through my routine like a ghost pouring coffee, feeding my old cat Maple, opening the curtains to let in the reluctant winter sun. But even as I moved, I kept catching myself staring off, my hands stilled, heart fluttering in my chest at the memory of Jason's voice, his eyes. At work, I avoided Greg. I felt too exposed, like I was wearing something sheer and inappropriate. Even though I dressed like I always did, neat blouse, soft cardigan, sensible shoes. But I was different now, even if no one could see it. I felt different. Midweek, Jason texted, just checking in, hope I didn't make things weird. I'm really sorry if I crossed a line. I stared at the message for 5 full minutes before replying. You didn't. Thank you for trusting me with that. I'm still thinking. I didn't expect him to reply. That he did. Take your time. Just wanted you to know. That night, I sat outside on my small porch, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the breeze rattle the branches overhead. I thought about love, how I used to see it, and how the years had made it feel like something other people experienced. When you're in your 60s, people stop looking at you the same way. You become invisible, even to yourself. But Jason, he didn't look at me like I was fading. A few days later, Greg's assistant called in sick, and we were suddenly short for a luncheon meeting across town. Greg was already booked solid, so I volunteered to drop off some paperwork at a local client's office. When I stepped outside, Jason was leaning against his SUV again, hands tucked into his jacket pockets. Hey, Diane, Dad said you might need a driver. His grin was gentler this time, less confident, almost careful. I hesitated, heart skipping. You sure you're up for it? He opened the passenger door. Always. The drive was quieter than before. The radio was off, and the city passed us by in a blur of motion and late autumn light. I could feel the tension, not heavy or awkward, but delicate, like a thread being pulled between us. As we pulled up to the building, I turned to him. You really meant everything you said that night. He met my gaze, not flinching. Every word. I nodded slowly. That's a lot for me to process. You're young, and don't, he interrupted, not harshly. Don't define yourself by that. You're not just your age. You're Diane. You're warm and smart, and when you laugh, it feels like the whole room softens. That's what I see. I wasn't prepared for how much those words would hit me. I'd built walls over the years, quiet, steady walls of politeness and restraint, but his words slipped right through the cracks. I handed him the folder I needed, delivered, our fingers brushing. His touch was warm, steady. I'll be back in 5, he said, and we didn't talk much on the way back, but when he parked in front of the office, he turned to me one last time. I don't want to confuse you or make you uncomfortable, but I meant what I said. And I'm okay with just being someone who reminded you how worthy you are. I didn't respond right away. I reached for the door handle but paused. "You did remind me," I said softly. "And I didn't realize how much I needed that." He smiled again, but this time there was something behind it, a quiet sadness maybe, or a patient kind of hope. I stepped out into the cold air and closed the door gently behind me, heart thudding against my ribs. Something was opening inside me, something I hadn't felt in years, and though I didn't know where it was leading, I knew this wasn't over. The weekend crept in quietly, but inside me, everything felt loud. I busied myself with chores, folding laundry that didn't need folding, reorganizing spice jars, even pruning my tiny backyard rosebush, though it was already too late in the season. But I couldn't silence the thoughts circling in my head. Jason's voice, his words, that moment our hands brushed soft, unassuming, but enough to leave me restless. It wasn't just about what he said, it was how he said it, as if I hadn't been invisible all these years, as if I wasn't someone to be pitied or politely tolerated, as if I mattered in a way I hadn't dared imagine anymore. That evening I sat in the living room with an untouched book in my lap, the fireplace flickering beside me. Outside, the wind rattled the windows gently. And then, as if the universe knew I couldn't take another moment of silence, my phone buzzed. "Jason, are you home? Would it be okay if I stopped by?" I stared at the message, my pulse quickening. I knew what this could mean or not mean. I knew how dangerous it could be to open the door to feelings I'd long buried. But I also knew that if I said no, I'd spend the night wondering what he would have said. "Yes," I typed back. "Just for a little while." 20 minutes later, his SUV pulled up in the drive. He stepped out, wearing a dark jacket over a soft grey sweater. The porch light caught the edges of his hair, damp from the misty air. I opened the door before he knocked. "Hi," he said, almost shyly. "Come in," I replied, stepping aside. He glanced around the entryway as he walked in, taking in the quiet home I'd built over decades. It's exactly how I imagined it: warm. Me settled. In the living room, I offered him tea, and he accepted. We sat across from each other, me in my armchair, him on the edge of the couch. There was a distance, but also a charge in the air, like something waiting to be acknowledged. "I didn't come here to push anything," he said, his voice low, careful. "I just wanted to talk, without the drive between us." I nodded, wrapping my hands around my mug. "I don't even know what to say," I admitted. "I've spent so long thinking a part of my life was over the part where anyone looks at me like that. And then you did." Jason leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees. "It's not over. You have no idea how you shine, Diane. You carry this quiet power, and I think maybe no one ever told you that." I looked away, swallowing a lump rising in my throat. That's the problem, Jason. No one ever did. Not even my husband, not really. We were companions, not soulmates. And after he passed, I told myself that was enough, that I didn't need to be seen that way anymore. "But you do," he said gently. "And that's okay." The tears came before I could stop them, not sobs, just a few quiet, aching drops. He didn't move, didn't reach for me, just let the silence stretch in a way that felt respectful, kind. After a moment, I stood up and walked to the window, watching the way the rain glistened on the glass. My voice was barely above a whisper. "Part of me wants to close this door, to thank you for reminding me I still have a heart, and then go back to my quiet life." "And the other part?" he asked softly, behind me. I turned around. He was still sitting, still waiting. "The other part wants to know what it feels like to be wanted, to be understood, even if it's just for a moment." Jason stood then, slowly, carefully. He didn't come closer, just stood across the room from me, hands loose at his sides. Then let's start there, with the truth. No games, no expectations, just two people trying to feel again. The room felt impossibly still. I took one step forward, then another, until we stood just a breath apart. I looked up at him, my voice quiet but certain. I don't know where this goes. You don't have to, he murmured. You just have to let it. And in that moment with the rain, outside, the warmth of the fire behind us, and our shadows meeting on the floor, I did. I let myself feel something I'd denied for too long, not desire exactly. Not yet, but closeness, hope. The fragile beginning of something unspoken. He didn't touch me, he just stood there with me in the quiet. Like that was enough. And somehow, it was. The following days felt like a quiet unraveling, not chaotic or messy, but slow and honest, like pulling a thread you didn't realize was loose. I moved through my world with the same routines: morning coffee, work at the office, feeding Maple, before bed, but everything felt more awake, more fragile, and at the same time more alive. Jason didn't rush anything, he didn't flood my phone with messages, didn't try to stake some claim on my time or my thoughts. But he was there in little ways: a good morning text, a photo of a book he thought I'd like, a brief call in the evenings just to hear my voice. And I found myself wanting that, not just the attention, but the sincerity behind it, the way he listened without trying to fix me, the way he saw past the surface. One Thursday evening, after a particularly long day at the office, I found him waiting again in the parking lot. He leaned against his SUV, hands tucked into the pockets of that same jacket he wore the night he came over. You look tired, he said as I approached. I am, I smiled. But seeing you helps. He opened the passenger door, just like before. Come on, I'm driving you home. We didn't talk much on the way. The silence between us had grown comfortable, a quiet place to rest, not something that needed filling. When we pulled into my driveway, he turned off the engine but didn't get out. Can I ask you something? He said. I nodded. What are you most afraid of right now about this? I looked at him for a long moment. The shadows of the dashboard played gently across his face, softening the edges of his youth, making him seem timeless, not older, not younger, just present. That I'll lose myself, I admitted. That I'll forget how to be Diane, that I'll start hoping for something I'm not allowed to want. Jason reached over slowly, just to take my hand. His palm was warm, steady. You don't have to lose yourself, he said. And you're allowed to want whatever you want. You've lived your whole life giving. Maybe it's time you let someone give back to you. I stared down at our hands, his fingers wrapped around mine with a tenderness that made my chest ache. I don't know what this is, I whispered. But I don't want to run from it. He smiled, and this time it wasn't sad, it was quiet joy. Like he'd been waiting to hear that, but never expected I'd actually say it. Then don't, he said. Let's just walk through it together. That night, he came inside not with expectation or urgency, just presence. He sat at my kitchen table while I made tea. We talked about childhood memories, about his mother who passed when he was a teenager, about my early marriage and the loneliness I never voiced. We shared pieces of ourselves, like offering someone a fragile heirloom with care and reverence. It was hours before I realized how late it had gotten. He stood slowly, lingering near the door. Do you want me to go? He asked gently. I didn't answer right away. I stepped closer, touched his chest lightly, not with intent, but with trust. No, I want you to stay. Just for a while. He nodded, understanding more in that one moment than most people had in years. We sat together on the couch. He pulled the blanket over both of us. My head rested on his shoulder, and his hand found mine again. There were no confessions, no kisses, no desperate grasping, just presence, warmth, the quiet rhythm of two people who had nothing to prove, only something to feel. And in that stillness, I realized something. This wasn't about age. It wasn't about rules or right timing. It was about connection, about being seen, and about letting go of the fear that kept me from accepting that someone might genuinely want to hold space for me. As the fire faded into embers and the night wrapped around us, I closed my eyes and finally let myself believe maybe love, in all its strange, imperfect forms, can still find you even when you thought it was too late. Especially then,